Uh, so before we get started, let me ask you guys, if someone were to ask you to define in your own words, what do you think is the best definition of a leader? It can be raw, organic. Who is a leader? And we're not talking of just general leaders, biblical leader, a Christ-centered leader, a gospel-centered leader. What would be your definition of a gospel-centered leader?
Someone who we follow.
Someone whom we follow. Okay, that's a good one. Any other thoughts?
Someone who's humble.
Someone who's humble. Okay, talking about a character associated with that. Any other thoughts?
Someone who serves and equips others.
All right, so now we are adding another layer. So there's a character component who serves and equips, right? There's a strategic component to that. Cool. I mean, keep thinking. So, is it 2 minutes up? Can we start?
We should start.
All right. So what I want to cover in this very brief 1 hour session, a little bit of background to that is, so I've been in leadership roles both in the church as well as in the corporate world. Plus, when I went to Fuller, one of the emphasis was global leadership. So I learned a ton of stuff from Dr. Bobby Clinton, who's a pretty unique guy because, you know, I don't know, when I say Fuller, people start judging me immediately, especially in Presbyterian Reform circles. So I didn't go to the School of Theology in Fuller, okay? So if that makes you feel better. So of the 3 schools, they have School of Theology, Intercultural Studies, and School of Psychology. The one class that's hugely popular and difficult to get a place is Bobby Clinton's lectures on leadership. Because people who come to seminary, they are kind of trying to figure out what they want to do and where they want to go in life and things like that. Right? So he really breaks it down. And so there, I borrowed a lot from that, then from my own experience, and then from our church plant over the past 5 years. So this one is going to be packed. I'm trying to cramp stuff I've learned over 5 years through different sources in 1 hour. Okay, so bear with me if I'm going super fast. I'll share the slides with you guys, but we will go. So why do I call it 360? I think we want to talk about, for leaders, if you want to develop as a well-rounded, holistic leaders, there are 3 areas that you need to work on. You know, one is, and the first and foremost is spiritual formation, which talks of being, right? As I said this morning, God is more concerned about who we are rather than what we do and what we become as a result of what we do. So spiritual formation is this whole union with Christ, understanding the gospel, and living it daily. That's a given. But that's just not the only one. You want the second sphere, if you want to think of it like a Venn diagram. I don't have something to draw. So there are these 3 spheres, right? You need to also know your giftedness so that you can work on enhancing it, developing your giftedness that can be used. And the third area is more strategic, is to see where in ministry you could use these things together. So that's what I mean by 360 is you're whole-rounded as a leader. Now as a church, there are certain things that a church possesses too. We may not have time to talk a lot about that. Now, your church has a set of core values. These are not necessarily defined by Pastor Susan or others. It's just organically what you guys value that someone who comes from outside can see. That's what they feel, your values. Is it hospitality, love, kindness, whatever. And church is like any organization, goes through life cycles. And it's awesome that you guys are just starting off. So I want to talk a little bit about the different life cycles your church is going to go through, and what kind of leadership is needed for each of those phases to make an impact. And I won't touch a lot on the other aspect. So here is a comprehensive definition of a leader, which helps us to have a grasp of comparing ourselves with. And this is Dr. Clinton's. You know, he says a leader is a person with a God-given capacity. Isn't that a laser thing? Yeah. Okay. So God-given capacity, your giftedness, and a God-given responsibility who is influencing a specific group of God's people towards God's purposes for them. What do you guys think? Makes sense? Anything strikes out for you in this? So if you're a leader, God has actually given you a unique capacity, a specific way to lead. And He's also given you a responsibility to use that capacity to influence, because leaders have influence, right? And the way you know you have influence is if you have people, someone said as a definition, are wanting to follow you. And so when you have people following you, you don't want to push your agenda on people. You don't want to use people to make yourself grow. You want to make sure that you're actually furthering God's purposes for those people in this. So again, to unpack the 360 for individuals, spiritual formation, ministry formation, and strategic formation. So spiritual formation is pretty much the key in all of these things, where God is actually shaping you through different processes, through crises sometimes, through failures, and you are actually developing godly character and really that inner life of Christ like this. And most leaders fail, like I was telling you guys, because this doesn't exist. They can be super gifted, their ministry can be awesome, and strategic formation again is trying to see what should I do in each phase of my life. So in leadership emergence, there are 6 phases that you go through as a leader. You know, the first phase is more like sovereign foundations, where you didn't pick where you were going to be born, what were the factors that were going to be part of your life, but God was already at work in that. And so that's the first phase. And the second phase is when you come to know Christ and you start discovering your spiritual gifts and you're using them in small ways. You know, I was telling Pastor Susan, my giftedness was evangelism and preaching. So like the next day I would start sharing the gospel to people. And I was trained by an Irish missionary. And I gave my first sermon. It was a street preaching in a village outside Chennai. And my first audience was a herd of cows. There was nobody to listen to. But you're discovering your giftedness as you keep going, and you find out what you're good at. And in the third phase is where God brings significant ministry opportunities. And you kind of find the intersection to all of that. So we spoke about this. If you're not kind of holistic in those 3 areas, either in your spiritual formation or your giftedness or strategically knowing where you need to be, when and how, you're prone to one of these things. And you want to know which of these is your potential weakness. I mean, we all have uniqueness, right? I mean, some of us, like, we don't have a problem with finances. We have pretty solid integrity, but it might be an area of pride. And in most, again, Asian leadership circles, it's not very common to be having sexual affairs and things like that, because I mean it's the whole community thing, though that does still happen. It's mostly number 3 and number 2. That's the cause of big leadership failures in all of that. So how do we overcome these barriers? It's having a broad perspective of ministry, having constant times of renewing, like coming to retreats and places like that, practicing your spiritual disciplines, having a learning posture, being a continuous learner at all times, and having mentors. And if you don't have these ingredients going on, you're at high risk to fall. So you can ask yourself right now, hey, how am I doing in all of these things? Have I plateaued sort of spiritually? How are my spiritual disciplines, my prayer life, my fellowship? Am I learning something new every month, every year? Or is just the last thing I learned in seminary or some youth retreat is what I stayed? And usually, I've spoken to different leaders. The thing that they learn the most is within the first 5 years of coming to Christ. And then life just gets busy and they just run with that. You just don't grow, you don't learn. And then at some point it catches up and you plateau, and then you're resorting to one of these things. And mentors, that's huge. And again, you want to have mentors, it's a 360-degree thing. You want to have a mentor who is spiritually more mature and strategically in a better place, has similar gift sets like yours. It's again, like attracts like. You want to have a peer mentor, someone who's going through that with you in life, who can kind of coach you, equip you. And you want to be mentoring someone who's younger than you. That's a healthy ecosystem to have. So this is pretty much an ecosystem you form for yourselves to thrive as effective leaders. Now, let's switch gears here to a church and a church plant. So before I do that, any questions so far for you guys? Yes?
How do you know what does that God-given capacity look like? How do you know you have it? How do you know you've been given that God-given responsibility? Quite often I think people feel like I'm not a leader. I'm being asked to be a leader. I don't know if I should be a leader. I think those kind of questions come up.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question. So, you have a God-given capacity when you, first of all, know your spiritual gifts. And, of course, we all know this, I'm sure Pastor Singh has studied, everyone has a spiritual gift. So, it's also a stewardship of the gifts. So when I first know that I have this gift, I can either use that gift effectively and grow and multiply. And as I keep working on enhancing that spiritual gift, then comes the second component. God brings a ministry situation where you organically start using it. And the time you actually have that capacity is when there is fruitfulness in that. So let's say your gift is prayer, right? And you would be surprised that people come and share their deepest, darkest stuff and ask you to pray for them. Or someone's going through suffering and they want a healing from God emotionally or psychologically, and you pray and God answers and boom. And they're going to immediately recognize you have that capacity. And it's sad if you don't do that and then you ask the wrong person to do the wrong thing, and if you're frustrated, you can clearly know you don't have the capacity. Right? So I don't know if that answers it, but it's more sort of a two-way thing.
So if it's based on gifts, spiritual gifts, and everyone has spiritual gifts,
Yes.
it means everyone is supposed to be a leader.
Absolutely. Leader is more like a secular term, right? We're talking of disciples, and it's disciples making disciples is what it is. So what we're talking as leadership is we're trying to make discipleship happen within the body of Christ by making everyone, it's this universal priesthood, right? Everybody is a priest, and we just want to be able to use that. Rather than deferring it all the time to, the pastors or the elders or the deacons who do have the spiritual responsibility, but everyone in the church, you don't have the consuming mindset, but they're actually trying to use that. And it can be possible that someone knows their spiritual gift, is just lazy to use it. So therefore, then somebody has to push them to try that. So let me quickly switch gears here to the church. Now you guys are starting as a church plant, right? So there are like 5-fold functions in Ephesians it talks about for having a balanced distribution of leadership in your church, in your launch team, for example, right? To be able to kick that off. So this is the apostolic team. That's an apostolic function. It's more, church planning, visioning, strategically thinking. It's a prophetic team. These are people who have gifts related to that, prayer and advocacy, social justice. And evangelistic functionality, where there are people who can actually, they have a special gift of evangelism, right? These are, and I think statistically there are like 2 to 5% of people in the church have this gift. They'll just be like natural evangelists, they'll just have conversations and be able to take it to the gospel just like that. Then you of course have the pastoral team and the teaching team. And within that you have all these subdivisions of functionalities. So the more distributed your team is, your launch team and your core team, in terms of all these 5 functionalities, then you're going to be a super healthy church. Then you guys all know this 80-20 rule, right? 20% of people do 80% of work in a church. That's because you don't actually have this equally distributed team. So it's a fun exercise for you guys to do with your launch team, to say, hey, what's our launch team leadership profile look like? The numbers you see, these are the ones I actually put up for our church leadership team. And as you can see, we are pretty heavy on the teaching side. A lot of teachers and preachers in our leadership team. We're pretty pathetic when it comes to social justice, or prayer is okay, but really the prophetic side of things, having that sense for what's happening in our neighborhoods, our cities, and having that passion, it's probably an immigrant thing where people don't really connect with where they are. And yeah, so for us, pastoral and teaching are our strengths, and this is one of our weakest. So then you can pray for God to bring those people, or you can look around inside your church so you can kind of balance it out and have a very healthy launch team and a core leadership team. And you start. You can go and do that. So I want to switch back to another leadership paradigm. There's like tons of these, of different types of leadership. And this is not restricted to the church. This was developed by a guy called Brett Johnson. It's called Lemon Leadership. He's a South African guy, and he used to live in the Bay Area, but he moved back to South Africa. And this is a fun thing for all of us to do, where it's an acronym. I'm going to show you what that is. When you know your leadership profile, it'll also give you an ability to know where you want to plug in and how you want to be used. So what we are going to do is I'll explain these to you, and we're going to do a quick workshop so it's a fun thing to do to see who we think we are. So Lemon stands for Luminary, Entrepreneur, Manager, Organizer, Networker. Okay, there are like lots of different models. Pretty much everybody talks of this. Some of them just have only 3 or 4 of these. This I kind of found to be comprehensive, and it's pretty cool. So if you're a luminary, each of them, they have some characteristics and a focus or a locus, right? So luminaries, these are the ideas people. Okay, they believe ideas precede activities. They're thought leaders, they're long-range thinkers, they can inspire an entire organization with the power of ideas, and they care more about the why than how. In fact, they'll get very frustrated if someone asks them, how do you think that's going to happen? I know, you already are knowing, thinking of somebody else. So entrepreneurs, I don't have to explain this, Bay Area, right? Pretty much, you have a lot. They believe opportunities precede activities. These are people who can sniff out potential, hey, there's this cool mission opportunity or ministry opportunity, inside or outside, right? And they are again short to medium term thinkers, and they bring a lot of energy and enthusiasm. They're not afraid to fail. It's like this whole fail fast and learn fast mantra. And they care more about the what rather than the why. So their focus is opportunities. Now managers are people who believe that planning is everything. These are planners. And they are long-term thinkers too. And they implement vision and usually work very well with luminaries. And they understand processes, policies, planning. So for them, it's more the how. And the organizers are action-oriented people. Okay, so they don't think, they don't plan. You just tell them, do it, they'll get it done for you. And they like to bring things to a close. So the only thing they're concerned about is, when are we doing this? When? And they're super loyal to leaders. And managers are systems level thinkers. And networkers, these are your people, right? They just love bringing people together. They can instinctively build networks. They're very event driven and they care about the who. So this is basically a profile of who Lemon leaders are. So you can think about this, take a couple of minutes to think who you think you are. And we are going to do a quick exercise after this. I'll walk you through some more. Now each of them looks at vision very differently. You know, let's say if we were to have this crosshair with axis, this being brightness and range, and accuracy and stability, you can see luminaries are only thinking, they have a very bright vision, but their range is small. And entrepreneurs, they're also within these two, they are going between brightness and range. Both of these guys don't care about stability or accuracy, all right? And your managers are more the balancing people. They kind of bridge the stability accuracy gap. And your organizers and networkers are in between these three guys. So when you talk about vision, that's how they look at an idea or an opportunity or whatever that can be. So I know it's too complicated. I'll just leave it here. So Carissa is going to go and pass you guys some Post-it stickies. So you're going to have one on your back. All right, just stick it on your back. And then if you have a pen, I think we should try to get some more pens if possible. I want you guys to go around and just mark the acronym that you think that person is. And no cheating, okay? Don't be influenced by what others wrote. And then you're going to write down who you think you are. And we are going to see if that actually matches up. And what your distribution is, just like that. And we're going to see, are you going to come top heavy on the luminaries? If you have too many luminaries in a room, it's a problem. It's going to be, or in your team, right? So, and the reason we can do this is like when you have like small different teams that you create, you want to be cognizant of both the spiritual gift mix, you know, the apostolic and the prophetic and prayer, and the leadership style. Because this is your DNA. This is how God has wired us, right? And you didn't make this up. You can't go to seminary and get this stuff. It's just there. You're just hardwired with this stuff. So when you can get that interface between your leadership profile and your spiritual giftedness, and if you can make that right mix, that's a dream team that can be explosive and go and get some good things. Can you pass it on? Hope we have enough. You can just stick one on your back or side or wherever you want. And just move around, guys. Let's take maybe 5 minutes to do that. And don't look at it right now. We just do a random selection of people to say. So you just stick it on your back, or you can stick it on your neighbor's back, get some help, and just go around and feel free to write on what you think these people are. Because you know everybody else. I don't.
I feel like I know nobody. I'm very short term and I'm very I like being told what to do and I'll just do it. I also like to think that I'm good at I go
You just write on other people? Or
Yeah, you write on other people.
Yeah, you just write on other people.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yes.
Daddy,
Yeah.
tell him to write the letter.
Just write the letter, okay?
Yeah, just write the
Just
letter.
L or E or M, whoever you think that person is.
Who is this? My wifey?
I think it was better. Was it like close to where we were in the water? I sat down there.
So just go around and
We should get a Sharpie.
But then you
your
have to-
Sharpie would be better, but
Everyone will
I
have
can,
letters on
I
each
can,
other.
I can tell what letter you're writing.
oh.
Here, John.
Kathy, I'm gonna take your sticky off so I can write on it.
Okay.
Oh, on the table. Yeah. Oh, my pen.
Here we go. Here we go. Interesting. Lemon sounds bad, but actually when you lay it out, it's not
No
bad.
idea what I wrote. I know what I'm not.
I don't even know what I
Your
am.
thing disappeared.
What are you? Better.
Oh, I can use that. That's true. That, or you can even use this.
That's true.
Yeah, I see consistency on this one. Hey, this doesn't work. I don't want a crusty card.
There's a.
You know what I
You have
am.
more post-its?
Ah,
Other sticky notes? Yeah, they want some.
We have big pieces of tape if you ran out of.
We're only gonna get you and me.
Just go to the thing.
Take that one. That's enough for now.
Do you not have one?
I got one.
Oh, you don't have one? I got one. Masking tape. Okay, I think I know one.
What?
Here, I can give you one of these if you I can give you one of these if you want it.
And you can be more than one, okay? So you don't have to just
I don't know.
specifically say one. If you think the
Don't get
person is more
offended if
than
people
one.
think you're what you're not. Everybody
Okay, we're
put
bad
on
at
the humility of
self-assessing.
Jesus. Don't assume that they're wrong about you get mad, okay?
Hey, you didn't write me mine.
My husband doesn't know.
I know you better than you know yourself.
All right, let's just take a couple more minutes and then we'll get back to our places. After you're done doing at least one round, try to at least mark for 2 or 3 people.
I'm gonna do you.
2, 3.
Huh? Oh, me? Oh. Okay, I'm gonna stop now.
Still know.
Sorry, Grace.
You're very easy.
I don't think anybody has to figure out where I am. Oh, that gosh, that's a tough one. Not bad.
Oh no.
All right, so are we done? You guys need more time?
You have enough of those.
So we're gonna get all like offended when we see what we like.
How many did you want that?
Oh, you're trying to capture.
Oh, here. All right, so let's do some fun.
Let's see.
I'll send you guys the slides, so don't worry about
Yeah,
this.
don't worry about copying that
Yeah,
stuff, guys.
you'll get all this stuff.
We'll send that out.
Um, so,
We can look at it? Oh.
When are we gonna look at it? Why?
oh no, hold on. Yeah. Oh no, so let's say. Okay, let's
You kind of just like make this all up.
So we'll just pick some people in random and we'll ask them what they think they are first, and then we'll see what others think they are, okay? Any popular votes on who do you guys want to start with first? Well, let's start with Pastor Susan. Who do you think you are, Pastor
Oh, you're gonna take it
Susan?
off?
Go
I'm an
ahead.
L.
What's that?
I'm an L.
You're an L. Okay. Now go ahead and pick your.
Gee, there was a lot of disagreement on that.
Okay, what do they have?
Everybody was an L. Somebody thought I was an L and an E. I think if there's a second one, I think I lean more toward E too.
Okay. So L and E.
But mostly an L.
Okay, that's pretty good. See that? I mean, and I picked him because he's probably the most known guy, right? You all know him a lot, and so it's going to be accurate. So let's start with Damon. Damon, who do you think you are?
E.
Okay. What do people say? Grab your seat.
You need to help her.
E. L and E. And
How many L's and how many E's?
1 L. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 E's.
Oh, wow. So everybody knows you too. That's pretty cool. And who else? How about one from each table? Anybody volunteering here? So you're Esther?
Yes.
All right. Sorry.
I'm bad at self-assessing. Maybe an M or an O.
M or O? Okay. And who do people think you are?
It's right here. It's on the ground. M and O.
Oh,
Okay. And a smiley.
a cheerful M&O.
Oh.
That's cool. How about someone from that table? John? All right, John. Who do you think you are?
That'd be very different from like people like. I always thought I wanted to be, or I thought I was an E, but I think what people would say M or O.
You would say M or O?
More of an M, I guess.
Okay. And what have people say?
100% M.
Oh, man.
To organize it for us. Oh.
All right, how about this table? Who wants to go?
It's good.
Daniel?
I think I'm
You think you're an O? All right. Who do they say you are?
Oh. And Mostly O's, but M and L.
Okay. So, did we? Oh, we wanted to finish the pastors. You know, Pastor Joe and Pastor Frank.
What do I think I am?
Yeah.
Everything.
Everything. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
E's and L's and M's and O's.
wow. That's awesome.
Lemo.
So what's more?
Lemon.
E's. So 2
2
E's.
E's, 3 M's, 2 O's, 1 L.
Wow. That's
He's an emo.
emo. Who are you, Frank?
N and L.
N and L. Okay. Let's see if people know you.
No thyself.
I am an L, 3 L's, 3 N's,
Wow. Do you kind of agree with the O's and M's or no?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
But no vowels.
So that's pretty cool, right? What, you guys like it?
Yeah.
And it's kind of good to be cognizant of this when you put people in teams, because for any project to succeed, you're going to need to have an equal balance of these people, right? In any teams, whether it's a worship team or a missions team or your launch team. And you want to have definitely the end people in your team, because they are the key. They're kind of like the fluid to make the teams grow. Again, none of us is solely one type of leader or another. We tend to be a blend, like we've seen. So we can work at building our own strengths and learning to develop servant leadership, mutually submitting to one another, especially someone who has a complementary leadership, so that you can know your blind spots and they can help you with that. And if you can combine this with your spiritual gifts and have that distribution, the more wider you're distributed, the more healthier will be your team, and more effective and impactful will be what you do. Who do you think Jesus was? I mean, he had all of them, right? In a sense, kind of fully actualized. So, anyways. All right, we'll switch gears, spend the last 15-20 minutes on, sorry about this diagram, it was taken from our leadership thing. So there is this thing called organizational life cycle, as I was saying. So when you birth a new church or an organization, it goes through phases, right? There is a courtship phase where before you launch, which I think you guys were, or you still probably are right now. And then if actually at that, if an organization survives the courtship phase, if enough people are excited to do, then you launch and you have an infancy phase. And that goes for a while, and then there is a climb, right? You're actually growing in your vision, people are tracking with you. And then you get to go phase, which is like once you've stabilized, you just take off. And then you have an adolescence phase. It's kind of where, you start having your growing pains and different sets of challenges. And then you reach your prime where you just nailed it, right? And at this point, either you kind of reinvent and grow, or the fall begins to happen. And if you've been in churches or organizations that have actually collapsed, this is what happens. The first thing that happens is aristocracy sets in, power struggles, territorialism, and then comes bureaucracy, and eventually death. So it's important to understand what kind of leadership roles are critical in each of these phases so the church or the organization can grow. So this was a model developed by Adizes, and I kind of took that and I combined this with leadership and spiritual gifts. And I came up with a model, and we've actually applied it to our own church plant to see how this works. And we are intentional in building our leadership team around this. And though it kind of happened organically for us, this is, for example, pre-startup, right? Let me go before that. So, courtship, you want your entrepreneurs to be the front face, right? They can smell the opportunities and they can lead, they can give direction to the team. Infancy is when you want the luminaries and the networkers, right? To be going in full speed, they can cast vision and the networkers can draw people. And in the go-go phase, the role of the managers and organizers become very critical because you have lots of things happening, things are taking off, and you need to have processes in place, and you need to run things. And then in the adolescence phase, again, the entrepreneurs and managers become critical. And in the prime phase, you want everybody on. The entire limit needs to be working in full swing. So, what are some things for the courtship phase? You know, the commitment, the commitment of the founding leaders is super critical to this. And these are the questions you're wrestling with your team, right? Why are we doing this? Who is going to do it? What exactly we are doing? How are we going to do it? When do we do it? Now, what I've had here in this is when they fail. You know, when it doesn't take off, if they call it an affair, what it essentially means is it was a crazy idea, but nobody bought into it. And so it just died, or there was lack of traction. People didn't take that step, fear of risk, and lack of faith, so the founder just gives it and quits. Now, congrats to you guys, you survived that phase, right? And you're sort of in the launch. So in the launch phase, or post-launch, or the infancy, this is going to be an action-oriented, opportunity-driven stuff. Things are going to be fluid as much as you try. Now you'll have few systems, rules, policies, performance. You'll have some great days and great success in some things, but not so much. And you kind of have to be the one doing things by pulling them together. This is where you guys need to take care of your pastors, where they start getting pulled in every direction because there's so many things going on. And every church plant is unique. Now, I wouldn't come and tell you guys this is what you have to do, because you're going to have your own idiosyncratic challenges. But you want to have the team already set so that it doesn't fall on your key pastors. And then if this fails, again, there are two reasons that it can fail, your launch. One is the leader's commitment. Leaders get burnt out. Or finances. I mean, if you can't, I know you guys are planning to raise funds and stuff like that, and if God doesn't provide, that's when it falls. And that's why 90% of church plants fall in the first year, because of these two main reasons. And I think you guys are doing great in that as well. You have amazing leaders, and I can see you guys are also passionate, and God is providing, so I think you'll be fine. Now, it may be a little too early to talk about this, but I think we are kind of in this phase right now. We are learning everything from you, where you found your niche. I mean, you're experimenting, right? And you're thinking this is kind of where we want to be. This is kind of who we want to reach. You've tried a bunch of things, and you're reaching the right people at the right time in the right place. And here comes these things, which can be key to failure, where there's lack of accountability, right? And this is a particular problem, I think. If it's not done very professionally, especially, I think it's a weakness with some Asian church plants, because we are relational, right? And I mean, we are friends, but you also need to know that stuff needs to happen. And if it doesn't happen, and if someone holds you accountable, people get upset. These have been some of the most difficult things for me personally, and some of our leaders, because everybody is a friend that you're working with. And then when someone doesn't do the task, and you ask them, hey, you know, you committed to this thing, but kind of seems to be a little low on your priority, people get upset. So it's good to kind of preset expectations and kind of be teaching your team as you move along in this, and this will be helpful. So this is when you need to have core values, your processes and stuff in place, and now is when you want to expand your leadership to people who get your vision, your mission, and all of this stuff. So I mean, we don't have time to go into these other things, but probably we can do this at some point. But this is the fall phase. And the fall phase also needs some leaders, where it's so dysfunctional, the church has gone crazy, and this is when managers become very critical, because you got to manage everything. That people are hurt, and there's finances involved, and there's processes, and you can actually breathe new life if you bring the right people back, but it's more of God. So that's just a little bit of some leadership stuff we could cover. I'd love to talk more about helping you guys figure out where you are in this whole leadership emergence thing. But perhaps we can do that sometime later. I don't want to overload you guys with stuff, but hopefully you've got an idea and a feel for it. So I think as a takeaway, if you can think of those 3 formations I spoke of earlier and ask yourselves, where am I in all 3 of these? If you want to be a healthy leader, you need to ask yourself, what is my spiritual health? Okay. How am I doing in my walk with God? How is my character formation going on? And if you sense that you're not doing that great in that area, it's probably best not to step up for leadership, but kind of talk to your pastor, even if he approaches you at that time, says, hey, I want you to lead. Feel free to tell him, no, I think I need to spend some time getting my heart right. Otherwise, you're setting yourself to be the statistic of that 3 or 4 people who fall. So secondly is the ministry formation. Okay, how have I equipped myself? I mean, even to get our jobs, we go and get degrees and MBAs and all of that, right? Now this is the church, and God expects us to be sharp in our skills and constantly learning, constantly growing, and really shooting for excellence, right? Because excellence is not a luxury in the Bay Area, it's a necessity. If you're trying to reach an unchurched person in the Bay Area, you got to be excellent. And it's tied to the, we have a God who is holy, whose excellence is part of his attribute, right? So, excellence in the way we do ministry. So you need to ask yourself, do I know my spiritual gift? How much have I been using it? For how long have I been using it? And how effectively have I been using it? And if not, there's like tons of stuff you can do to, spiritual gifts inventory, and I'm sure you guys might have done something like that. Or talk to your leaders and nail that and get sharp. And third is strategic formation, right? Where am I using these right now? On a scale of 1 to 10, to what extent am I using these things to fulfill the purpose and vision of the church? So that's something you guys can think, and depending on which of these you feel like you need to grow, you can reach out to one of your leaders and pray and go from there. So I'll stop here. We can have some questions or discussions, anything you guys want to talk about. So you guys are launching when?
September 29th.
September 29th. But yeah, I'm just kind of super impressed to see you guys and your heart for church plan, and I think Pastor Susan, the pastoral team is blessed to have you guys so committed and so passionate. Yeah.
No questions?
All right. Well, I'm still around. Yes.
You were talking about when you're friends, but then you have expectations, and then there's like controversy that occurs because you want someone needs to get some stuff done and they're not getting their job done. Then like how would you approach that, or I don't know, how would it trip things up, or can you just talk more about that, I guess, in general?
Yeah, so
How do you
it's,
handle that?
so I
had
think,
some conversations in
he's coming for you guys, be ready. No, I think, first of all, it's my failure as a
Okay.
leader, because you want to put the right people in the right job in the first time.
So we blame Susan first.
Just blame it all on him. Okay? I mean, just because you're my friend and you're a cool dude doesn't mean you can do everything, right? And so when you're in startup mode, everybody's excited, they want to help, everybody wants to jump in and do it. And once they start doing it, they kind of, it gets territorial a little bit, right? And then they realize, oh, I'm actually not good at it. And then it sets up the whole awkwardness thing, right? So that's where I would start, but that's,
So have you had to ask people to step down from their positions or move them to other areas? when
yeah,
they're
I
not
think
feeling?
the key is to find out what they're actually good at. I mean, there's a reason why they're not doing it, right? I mean, it's very rarely because they are lazy or they don't have motivation. It's probably because they're not in the right place doing the right thing. And so you can go as a friend, and I've actually had to do that with a couple of guys. And these are people I had discipled myself, so it was a little, I mean, they were hurt a little bit. But there again, you bring the gospel conversation, right? Hey, it's not about you. It's the whole kingdom thing. And guide them to be in a place where they can be successful and shine. So it's like everybody wins at the end. So that's more an art than a science. And that's where you got to keep your emotions a little behind and really lovingly and graciously approach that. And I've had one where I blew it, and the person just left the church. They're like, oh, how dare you ask me this thing? I quit. And again, I would still blame myself rather than them. Cool. All right, kids are here. I'm around and be happy to answer any questions anytime. Thanks again for showing up. Appreciate you guys. Hope it was fun.